Welcome back to another episode of the Heroes Veritas podcast. I'm your host, Tim Bass, and it is Tuesday, another recording with just me. This upcoming Thursday, we will be having our special guest, Ryan King. He is an author, he is a speaker, he is a businessman, father. He has taken up the mantle of championing masculinity within today's world, and he is working on a book that he is putting together as a tactical life guide for his sons as they come of age. So you'll be sure to check that out. We get into some really great conversations. He is just an absolute wealth of knowledge. So if you aren't subscribed, be sure to subscribe so you can make sure to check out his interview. So today, I want to talk about something that I believe is sorely missing in a lot of people's approach to life. It is a framing, a parameter, if you would, on how to accomplish and be of use, be of service to your tribe. And that is the difference between an asset and a liability. Now, most people look at assets and liabilities in the frame of debt. Maybe they look at it in the frame of business or real estate. We all pretty much understand that an asset is something that brings positive use or function within a space, and a liability is something that has energy depletion and or financial depletion and or depreciation as you own it or use it. This goes the same for humans. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that the function of assets and liabilities in the space of a human being. Now, if I say to you that you need to frame your tribe, frame the people in your life in assets and liabilities, inevitably what people tell me is that that is heartless, that is cold, that is, mechanistic. Maybe you shouldn't treat people like you can use them. But the reality is, I'm not saying treat people as assets and liabilities in the sense and frame of being heartless, cold, not supporting, so on and so forth. But what I am saying is that the access they have to you needs to be correlative to the response that they give you. And what I mean by that is every relationship is reciprocal. Let me say that again. Every relationship is reciprocal. Now, how you calibrate reciprocity may change how you interact in a specific relationship. I'll give you an example. If, for instance, I go down to the local coffee shop and I talk to a barista, this reciprocation system is I come in, I ask them for service, they provide me service, and they are getting paid to provide me that service. The reciprocity is I come, I am the reason that they have a job, they work, they provide the value of getting me my coffee, and now the close of that interaction is I have my coffee, they have a job, and that interaction is reciprocated very quickly. Okay. Now let's flip it on its head. Let's say that this person hates their job. They're bad at their job. They have no desire to be there. They have no desire to help you out. And you walk in and you go, hey, let me get a large coffee. And they're like, I'm not getting you a large coffee. You can go fuck yourself. And they spit in your eye and they tell you to leave. Well, that relationship is no longer reciprocal. There was an expectation that wasn't met on either side. You do not have your coffee. Instead, you got spit in the eye and you got told to F off. And here you are pissed off at the establishment, right? Because why would they hire this person, right? So now you take those two frames. You have the reciprocity where you come in, they have a job, you're the reason they have a job, and they get paid to provide you service. They may get a tip from you, right? Because they did so well. That's reciprocity. Versus the person who hates their job, they're miserable, and you go and you ask for a large coffee, they spit in your eye, they tell you to go after yourself, and now they get no tip, they may lose their job. This is the easiest and simplest example of a broken down reciprocity system. But this goes to the same degree within a relationship. And what I mean by calibrating reciprocity is in longer term relationships, deeper relationships, whether that be a spouse, a significant other, a best friend, friendship, an acquaintance, a work colleague, maybe a parent or a family member, you may dismiss some bad behaviors because there's a deeper connection. For instance, family is often where we see this a lot, where maybe you have an overbearing father, maybe you have a very hovering parent, helicopter parent from a mother, and it really frustrates you. And you're like, man, I really just want her to leave me to do my thing. and she steps on your toes, or he, comes over a little too overbearing, and you let it go because you're like, well, that's my parent, and I just have to deal with it. Now, I'm not saying don't set boundaries. I'm merely saying that when we calibrate longer term relationships, you can see a little bit more pliability with the reciprocity, because overall they're your parents for this example, and that's how they are. So you set boundaries and expectations based on how they are, not based on what you need from them. So maybe you keep them at length, right? Right. Maybe you keep them at arm length, and you say, you know what, you're really overbearing, or you really try and control the way I do things. Maybe you judge the way I do things a little too much for me. But I still love you. I still want you in my life. I'm still going to allow you to, float in within a certain parameter, even though the reciprocity is broken. What I typically find is that either people don't set the boundaries to identify people as asset and liabilities, and then they pour all their energy into liabilities, and then they feel burdened, they feel exhausted, they feel like they're not appreciated, and then what ends up happening? Resentment sets in. That resentment then turns into a lot of energy lost. And now you have this system where reciprocity is broken, but now you're also pouring resentment and negative energy into this relationship rather than just walking away from it. So, first and foremost, I'm a big advocate as everything is your responsibility. So, yes, energy vampires exist, liabilities exist. People may not even know that they're liabilities. Maybe they have different expectations of what an asset is. And so the first thing you need to know is what is an asset and what is a liability specifically for you. And I don't mean, is this person paying my bills? It may be something as intangible as I get to laugh a lot when I'm around this person. I feel supported by this person. What is their asset that they bring to the table? Because at the end of the day, you as a person have to be an asset in order to require others to be an asset. And that brings me to a very valid point that a lot of people fail to look at from a responsibility standpoint, especially in today's world with social media and entitlement and all this other shit. You need to be an asset, period. If you expect others to deliver, you have to deliver. If you're going to lead by example. If you're going to speak from experience. Do not sit on platitudes and theoretics when asking somebody to deliver to you, because it's going to be a shaky foundation that's going to fall apart. So before you start asking of others, make sure you are delivering asset level behavior. For me specifically, my friends like to call me a Boy Scout. I'm the guy that has the basics of skills to help you get through everything. Now, I've prided myself on being an asset. I've made sure that I'm an asset. The problem with being an asset overtly is that a lot of times you do end up in a place where you feel like you're being abused, you feel like you're being overused, feel like you're underappreciated, because you've created a social contract and a dynamic where you're the go-to guy. Everybody comes to you for help. Everybody knows you're the guy to go to. Everybody knows that you're the guy that gets shit done. So then, as an asset, if you're going to develop yourself into an asset, once you're an asset, then you can start to create the boundaries and the parameters on, okay, who's an asset in my life versus who's a liability. Now, I know that it's really popular right now to be like, if there's negative people in your life, get them the fuck out of your life. You don't need that kind of shit in your life. That isn't necessarily always the case. So maybe you have a bad boss, maybe you have a bad coworker, maybe you have family members that are negative. What asset and liability structures allow you to do is create parameters of effectively rings. I talk about this a lot, is set the perimeter. What are your rings of the people? Now, in your inner circle, in your closest ring, you're going to have all of your assets, the people that bring nothing but positivity to your life, the people that you know you can count on, the people you can trust. Now, just outside of that, you may have your kind of half-assing, and this is very simplified. You can get as very deliberate and complex as you want within your own kingdom, within your own tribe. But this is going to be very simple just for the sake of example. So within that circle, that first circle, you have your assets. These are everybody that fills a niche. They fill a need. They're there for you. You can always count on them. They'll never let you down. What this means is if shit hits the fan and the world's going to hell, these are the people that get all your attention, your energy, your spirit, your resources, both physical and emotional, spiritual, ethereal. These are your core group. Now, beyond that, maybe there's somebody who has one asset, but they have a lot of liabilities. Maybe they're a great friend, but they complain a lot. Maybe they come to you and they drain you, but you know that they'd always be there for you and you can count on them, right? Maybe they don't have any skills, but they're funny, so they make everybody laugh. Again, very simplified. This can get as complex as you want it to be. They're going to be on the next ring. And then the third ring being your complete liabilities. These are people that you care about. Maybe they're family members with negativity. Maybe they're people that have nothing nice to say. Maybe they're people that don't bring anything to the table, but you're connected to them in some way, whether it's blood or family, or they're, a step parent. Maybe they're a mother-in-law, whatever that is. That's going to be your furthest out ring. And those are your energy vampires, your liabilities. And then beyond that is just people these are the people that have nothing to do with you. Maybe they're acquaintances, maybe they're the barista I talked about earlier, and they really have no impact on your internal system. They could be there or not be there. Those are your full-on liabilities. They don't bring anything to the table for you. They don't support you in any way. So they don't really have a place within your kingdom, within your perimeter. This is what I mean by setting your assets and liabilities. A lot of people assume that when I say assets and liabilities, I mean, if they're not an asset, if they're not bringing positivity to your life, just completely cut them out and you should just not have any space for them whatsoever. And that's just not always the case. There's a lot of nuance within life that maybe they need a place at your table, but you just don't know where to plug them in, or maybe they're not perfect or whatever it is. You cannot start to articulate what that ring looks like, that system of structure, that setting of your perimeter will look like, until you yourself are confident on what assets you bring to the table and what liabilities you need to overcome. Because here's the reality of humans is we are all both asset and liability. We all have some level of liability, right? For instance, no matter how big of an asset I am, I'm going to take food, I'm going to take energy, I'm going to take space. So that means that my asset has to override the liability, okay, within that space. Now, depending on what tribe you move to and from, your assets and liabilities are going to change. For instance, I may move into a space with a lot of tactical guys, a lot of badass, violent nomads that know exactly what the fuck they're going to do in the event of a chaotic, violent strategy. Now, am I functional in that space? Yes, I am functional, but would I be an asset in that space? Hell no. I don't work out like that. I don't train my body like that. I don't go and train every day with violence. So in that space, yes, I could be an asset to a certain degree, but if all they do is train violence, for instance, a special forces unit, and I'm just kind of a weekend warrior guy, I'm going to be a liability to that group. But if I go over to this group, a group of people that never train violence, they don't even understand violence, they don't even want to talk about violence, and I go to that space, then as a protector, I'm very much going to be an asset. So being very cognizantly aware of what your asset structure looks like and your liability structure looks like, it's going to afford you the ability to move between groups seamlessly and present yourself in the best light and the best asset proposal that you can. Now, every group you attach yourself to, you should be seeking to be an asset. Now, again, how different groups define assets is going to be different. Okay? A group of women hanging out on the corner at brunch at their local place, the asset's going to be more towards fun and no drama. But a group of men on a battlefield who are trying to win a war, their assets are going to be very different. And some people would say that that's apples and oranges. So, okay, men at a football game talking about sports stats and things like that, you as an asset being able to chug a shit ton of beer and have a good time and make everybody feel welcome is going to be different than on a battlefield where they need you to fucking triage. They need to make sure that you can shoot straight, you can identify a target, you can contact left, right, and forward. They need to know that you're able to be self-sustaining. That space of asset is going to be different than the sports space of asset. So when you're looking at assets and liabilities, I want to reiterate, it is not to cut people out. It is not to devalue or demean somebody. It is merely to give you a process of labeling structure so that your brain and your body and your life can attribute the best resources for those that deserve it. I know in society people say that they're entitled to things. I get that in society people don't like the idea of having to deserve and earn their place at a table. But the reality is when shit hits the fan, when luxury falls out, when decadence falls out, when things are not going well, when you aren't in your savings, when you're not at the best, and they will. Everybody goes through storms. You're either going into one or you're coming out of one. There's always a storm. That's just the reality of life. Struggle is life. So, regardless of how society views this structure, I am telling you this is a functional structure. It doesn't have to be known to everybody. You don't have to make it clear to everybody. You don't need to go to that guy and be like, listen, bro, you're a liability, so get the fuck out. That's not what I'm saying. Have some decorum, comport yourself with a certain level of tact. But at the end of the day, in your mind, you need to know where people land. Because at the end of the day, that's going to afford you the ability to move quickly and seamlessly at different situations. The entire purpose of the asset and liability structure is to help you manage chaos. It's to help you manage chaos. Especially for men, our job is to bring order to chaos. And so in a situation where chaos is reigning, whatever that looks like for you, chaos could be as simple as a car accident, could be as crazy as, the fall of the Roman Empire, which to some people that's a very real thing right now. So when you look at those things, the more you can prep, the more you can put into a space where when shit hits the fan, when chaos hits the fan, these are my assets, these are my liabilities. This is where they can plug in. These are the people that can't plug in. You can create a system to where you can manage the chaos that much better. So what if you're a liability? What if you do your assessment and you're like, fuck, man, I have no assets. I'm all liability. I'm overweight. I eat too much. I'm lazy. I don't care what it is. Insert negative label system. What do I do? How do I become an asset if I've been a liability for X amount of years? Well, first and foremost, do you have a tribe already? Do you have people you hang out with? Do you have people that you connect with? Are the people in your life that you respect? If the answer is no, then I would argue that you need to seek that answer as to why the answer is no. Why are you a loner? Why do you have nobody? Why don't you respect anybody? Why are you become introspective? Spend time learning who you are. Generally speaking, if you spend time learning who you are, you will find the delineation between asset and liability within yourself. You will identify and articulate to yourself what things need to be developed in order for you to be an asset, because you'll start asking the questions like, who do I want to be? Who do I want to be around? What do I want to be known for? Right? I do this with my clients during our origin story phase in my 12-week program. So this is a very critical step. Identify who you are and who you want to become. So if you don't have a tribe, that's step one. If you do have a tribe, it could be as small as one other person. It could be as big as, 100, 200 people, followers, whatever. Become curious about their input and take it seriously. Respect their input. Ask them what they feel about you. Ask them why they keep you around. Ask them why you're an asset to them. What makes you somebody that they want to be around? And also ask them why they wouldn't want to be around you. When don't they want to be around you? Are you whiny? Do you complain too much? Do you not take advice? Are you opinionated without any solutions? Whatever the case is, right? Ask them those questions and be earnest about it and let it hit the ego and make adjustments. Start changing the trajectory. If they're like, hey man, I love you to death. You're funny as hell. You're great. But the reality is, like, you're lazy. You don't like to work. You have a fucking complaint every time we have shit to do. Okay, cool. That's something that you can work on. And work on it. Become intentional about it. Work on it. The best system for identifying assets and liabilities is questioning everything. Become curious about where you land. And again, I said it before, take responsibility. You are responsible for everything in your life. If you're surrounded by liabilities, you don't know anybody that are assets, then the reality is that you're probably a liability, because that's who you associate with. Like for me, I spent a lot of time in my early 20s surrounded by liabilities. We drank all the time. We'd fight all the time. We'd go out to bars every other night. We were liabilities. Now, in that time, my brain, what I was trying to do was mask and escape a lot of problems that I had emotionally and mentally and spiritually. That's my own story. I'm not saying that that's anybody's story that's listening to this, but if it is your story, you have to start to articulate, is this really where I want to take my life? And that's what I did. I was surrounded by liabilities because I was a liability. I didn't challenge anybody around me because I was a liability. They didn't have to worry about me judging them or making them feel bad or making them feel like they should be doing more. Why? Because they were me. I was them. So if you look at everything and you're like, fuck, everybody around me is a liability. Well, that's because you're probably a liability. And again, go back to step one, start identifying who you are. What kind of asset do you want to be? What kind of liabilities do you need to shore up? What kind of person do you want to comport yourself as? So if you're in that space and you're a liability, don't get down on yourself. I know a lot of people that use this like, oh, I'm a liability, and they stop, right? They then wallow. Don't wallow. Wallowing is the number one way to remain a liability and continue to be a liability. Write it down. I say it all the time. Demons cannot live on paper. Write down what's bothering you. Write down what the problems are. Write down what your shortcomings are. Write down why you're a liability. Once you identify why you are the way you are and how you are the way you are, you can start the path of growth. Until you do that, it's like shooting arrows into the dark. You have no idea where the target is. Yeah, you might hit it every once in a while, but you're not intentional about it. So you have no way of making the adjustments and the necessary corrections to hit that target every time. So to recap, start identifying what your assets are, what your liabilities are. If you don't know what your assets are and you don't know what your liabilities are, write them down. Demons can't live on paper. Once you identify what your assets and liabilities are, start looking at people and making sure that the people that are around you are assets more than liabilities. Start creating a structure where you know where everybody lands. Don't have to cut everybody out, but set boundaries. Start protecting your energy. Start protecting your resources. Everybody is a finite resources. Everybody is a finite resource. The sun is a finite resource. It may last for a long time. You may be able to pour from that pitcher a long time before you burn out, but eventually you will burn out. The way you make sure that it remains is you take care of the inner sanctum. You take care of your own stuff first. Take responsibility for yourself. Make sure you are the asset that you want to be surrounded by. Now, the fallout from this, and I will take and speak from experience on this. Some of the fallout from this is once you start to identify what your assets are, what your liabilities are, and you start to cultivate accordingly, two things may happen. One, people may tell you you've changed, and they may start to pull themselves away from you. That's a very scary thing, especially if you've been in the same space for a long time. I went through this in my 20s. I had a lot of contention about the fact that I wasn't getting along with people anymore. I wasn't the fun guy that was drinking at parties and having a good time. And I had to come to terms with the fact that that guy wasn't serving me anymore. So if that guy wasn't serving me anymore, that doesn't automatically mean that it's going to continue to serve them. The person that serves me needs to serve me first, and then everybody else will be a secondary. They'll either fall away or stick it out accordingly. Two, once you start surrounding yourself with assets, you're going to feel the pinch of change. And what I mean by that is you're going to be held liable for being that asset all the time. Example, if I surround myself with great leaders, the expectation is that in order for me to earn my seat at that table is to be a great leader. Doubt, imposter syndrome, all the things are going to enter your brain. All that negativity is going to enter your brain. What if I get found out? What if I'm not as good as I think I am? What if they don't like me? What if? Address it in here and outwardly with that. Hey, I'm feeling like I really don't have a spot here. Can you explain to me why I have a spot here? Address it openly. Write it down if you have to. Demons can't live on paper. But know that it will happen, because once you start to level up, once you start to surround yourself with people that are on a different trajectory, on a different path, and you assign yourself to them through an identification of assets, then there's a reality that as you're growing, you're going to get in contact with people that are better than you. And that would be ideal. You never want to be the smartest person in the room. You never want to be the most capable in the room. Mark Evans is the one that taught me this when I met him last year. He said, all that does is make sure that you're king of the dipshits. And I played king of the dipshits for a long fucking time. And it sucks because you think you're great until you get around other people who are greater. And so now, as much as it hurts my ego, as much as it hurts my spirit at times, I seek to be in these rooms where I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm not the best guy in the room. And inevitably, it forces me to start to have the conversations of why am I not that guy? Why am I not better? Why have I not gotten farther? Why have I not developed this thing? Whatever that thing is. And those are hard conversations, but if you're honest with yourself and you're intentional about it, Eventually you will have it. It's inevitable because you just won't stop. I started doing this a couple years ago. I did it previously unknowingly to me. I didn't have the language to articulate it. And I can tell you right now that my circle, my tribe, my inner sanctum, my council is so tight, so well organized, and so well oiled that whenever I have those doubts and those fears, I know exactly who to go to that's going to tell me the thing that I need to hear, not what I want to hear. Hear me on this, not what I want to hear, what I need to hear. It's a very different thing. A lot of people surround themselves with people that'll tell them what they want to hear because it's fluffy and it's nice and it makes them feel good. No, I surrounded myself with people that tell me what I need to hear. It's not always what I want to hear. Sometimes I'm fucking hurting and I really want to hear them say, you know what, you're valid, bro, it's all good. But most of the time, it's not valid. It's not true. So you need to position yourself in a place where you're okay with getting your ego checked every once in a while, if not all the time. Stop playing king of the dipshits, as Mark Evans says. Time to level up. And the one thing that he told me that has absolutely come true is once you do that, the fear of getting into that next level and people not accepting you is all in your head. Because as soon as you get into that next level, people want to see you grow. People want to see you succeed. People want you to be that person that you want to be. They want to help you get there. Because if they didn't have people do that for them, then they wouldn't have got there. And so again, to pull this full circle, all relationships are reciprocal. So once you get into that next rung, they're going to pour into you and bring that value to you because they want, in the hopes that you will provide them that back tenfold over time, because all relationships are reciprocal. I hope this helps, guys. I absolutely love this function. Like I said, I started a couple years ago. Everything is tightened up. My circle isn't that big anymore because now I have quality over quantity, and that's an outcome that I much prefer. Some people aren't the same way. You got to find your way in this. How you calibrate your assets and liabilities is going to be specific to you, so make sure to play with it. Start testing things. Don't take my word for it. Just go test things. But I guarantee you, once you start categorizing people as assets and liabilities in the sense of how they serve you and how you serve them, it's going to completely change the way you do life and how you interact with your relationships. With that, I'll check you guys later. If this helped in any way, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share. As always, we can't grow unless you let us grow. And we'll check you next time on the Heroes Veritas podcast. Stay dangerous.